In every city and every country across every continent, two people can start with the same resources, the same opportunities, the same education, even the same family background. But one becomes wealthy, and the other struggles for decades, wondering why success never arrived. Why does this happen? What invisible force separates those who build empires from those who barely survive? Earl Nightingale discovered something that most people never see. He said the difference is not in circumstances. The difference is not in luck. The difference is not even in talent. The difference is in thinking. The way you think determines everything. Your thoughts create your reality more powerfully than any external condition ever could. Today you will discover the exact thinking pattern that separates the rich from the poor, not in money, but in mind. This is not about positive affirmations or wishful thinking. This is about the deep mental programming that controls your financial destiny, whether you realize it or not. Wealth begins long before money appears. It begins as a mental blueprint, a pattern of thought that runs silently in the background of your consciousness. Earl Nightingale observed something simple yet profound. He noticed that people with rich minds and people with poor minds live in completely different mental universes, even when they occupy the same physical world. A poor mind waits for something to happen. A rich mind decides what will happen. A poor mind fears risk and avoids uncertainty. A rich mind studies risk and calculates probability. A poor mind sees obstacles everywhere and feels paralyzed. A rich mind sees strategies and feels energized. These are not personality traits, these are learned thinking patterns. And because they are learned, they can be unlearned and replaced. Earl Nightingale said something that shook the foundations of personal development. He said the mind controls everything, but few people control the mind. Most people let their minds wander into fear, doubt, distraction, and negativity. They believe they are thinking freely, but they are simply reacting to programming installed years ago. The rich understand something critical. They understand that the mind is a tool, and like any tool, it must be directed with intention. Without direction, the mind drifts toward survival mode, toward fear-based thinking, toward scarcity. This is the default setting of the untrained mind. But the trained mind, the mind of someone who becomes wealthy, operates from a completely different frequency. Most people do not realize that their thinking has been shaped by forces outside their awareness. Childhood messages, societal conditioning, repeated failures, and the opinions of others all combine to form an unconscious script. This script runs automatically, influencing every decision, every reaction, every belief about what is possible. You might believe you are thinking independently, but if you listen closely to your thoughts, you will notice they sound remarkably similar to the voices you heard growing up, the fears your parents had, the limitations your teachers imposed, the skepticism your friends reinforced. All of this becomes internalized. It becomes your inner voice. And that inner voice determines your financial reality. A poor mind thinks, I hope things get better. A rich mind thinks, I make things better. This single shift in perspective transforms everything. Hope is passive. Creation is active. Hope waits for external conditions to change. Creation changes the conditions. When you shift from hoping to creating, you step into a completely different level of personal power. Earl Nightingale understood this deeply. He knew that the poor are not poor because they lack opportunity. They are poor because they lack the mental framework to recognize and seize opportunity when it appears. Opportunity is everywhere, but only the trained mind can see it. Think about two people walking down the same street. One sees problems, the other sees possibilities. One sees a closed business and thinks about failure. The other sees the same closed business and thinks about acquisition. One sees a crowded market and thinks there is no room. The other sees the same crowded market and thinks there is demand. The external reality is identical. The internal interpretation is completely different. And it is the internal interpretation that determines who becomes wealthy and who does not. This is why changing your external circumstances without changing your thinking never works. You can give someone money, but if their thinking remains poor, the money will disappear. You can give someone a business, but if their thinking remains limited, the business will fail. Wealth is not something you acquire. Wealth is something you become. Earl Nightingale identified 3 fundamental laws of wealth thinking. These are not theories. These are observable patterns that appear in every successful person, in every culture, in every era. The first law is the law of intention. The rich mind knows exactly what it wants. Crystal clarity, a definite purpose. Earl said that without purpose, the mind drifts toward fear and distraction. Purpose acts as a compass. It directs your attention, your energy, your decisions. When you know what you want, your mind begins to filter reality through that lens. You notice opportunities related to your goal. You attract people aligned with your vision. You develop skills necessary for your success. But when you lack clarity, your mind scatters. It reacts to whatever grabs your attention. It follows trends. It chases distractions. It wastes energy on things that do not matter. Most people have vague wishes instead of clear intentions. They want to be rich, but they do not define what rich means. They want success, but they cannot describe what success looks like. This vagueness keeps them stuck. The subconscious mind cannot work with vague instructions. It needs specificity. It needs a target. When you give your mind a specific target, it begins to work on that target even when you are not consciously thinking about it. This is the power of intention. It activates the creative forces within you. The second law is the law of creation. The mind creates in images. Everything you see in the physical world was first an image in someone's mind. The chair you sit on, the building you live in, the phone you hold, all of it began as a mental picture. Earl Nightingale taught that the poor mind sees problems, the rich mind sees projects. The poor mind visualizes loss. The rich mind visualizes outcomes. When you train yourself to think in images of success, your mind begins to construct the pathway toward that success. This is not magic. This is how the brain works. The brain does not distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a real experience. When you visualize yourself achieving a goal, your brain begins to wire itself as if you have already achieved it. This creates confidence. This creates familiarity. This creates readiness. Athletes use this technique. They visualize perfect performance before competition. Surgeons visualize successful operations before entering the operating room. Entrepreneurs visualize successful launches before releasing a product. The mind rehearses success, and the body follows. But most people do the opposite. They visualize failure. They imagine worst-case scenarios. They replay past mistakes. And their mind wires itself for more of the same. If you want to think like the rich, you must discipline your imagination. You must refuse to let it wander into fear. You must intentionally direct it toward the outcomes you desire. The third law is the law of responsiveness. Rich thinking responds to life with strategy. Poor thinking reacts with emotion. When something unexpected happens, the poor mind panics. The rich mind pauses and thinks. When a problem arises, the poor mind blames. The rich mind plans. When an opportunity appears, the poor mind hesitates. The rich mind acts. This difference in responsiveness determines everything. Life does not reward those who react emotionally. Life rewards those who respond strategically. And strategic thinking is a skill. It can be developed. It starts with the simple practice of pausing before reacting. When something happens, take a breath. Ask yourself, what is the intelligent response here? Not the emotional response, not the fear-based response, the intelligent response. Over time, this becomes automatic. You train your mind to default to strategy instead of emotion. Earl Nightingale hinted at something deeper, something that most people overlook. He understood the secret role of the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is far more powerful than the conscious mind. It controls your habits, your beliefs, your automatic reactions. It runs silently in the background, shaping your reality according to the patterns it has learned. And here is the critical insight. The subconscious mind amplifies whatever you repeat. If you repeat fear, you live afraid. If you repeat clarity, you live with purpose. If you repeat wealth, your mind begins to build the path toward it. This is why affirmations work for some people and not for others. Affirmations are not magic words. They are tools for reprogramming the subconscious, but they only work when combined with emotion, repetition, and belief. The subconscious does not care what you feed it. It grows whatever is planted, just like fertile soil. Plant seeds of doubt, and doubt will grow. Plant seeds of confidence, and confidence will grow. This is the law of mental cultivation. Most people plant weeds and wonder why their garden looks terrible. They complain about their results while continuing to think the same thoughts that created those results. Earl Nightingale said we become what we think about. This is not philosophy. This is neuroscience. Your repeated thoughts create neural pathways. These pathways become stronger with repetition. Eventually, they become your default mode of thinking, and your default mode of thinking determines your default results. The wealthy understand this. They guard their minds carefully. They refuse to consume negative media. They avoid pessimistic people. They do not allow fear-based thinking to take root. Instead, they feed their minds with empowering ideas, inspiring stories, strategic knowledge. They understand that the mind is either growing toward wealth or shrinking toward poverty. There is no neutral ground. Every thought either moves you closer to your goals or further away. And most people do not realize how many thoughts they think each day that move them further away. Thoughts like, I cannot afford that. I am not smart enough. It is too risky. People like me do not succeed. These thoughts, repeated over time, become beliefs. And beliefs shape behavior. And behavior creates results. This brings us to one of the most powerful practices Earl Nightingale ever taught. Though he approached it indirectly, it is the bedtime wealth practice. This is the practice the wealthy use, consciously or intuitively, and it works because it targets the subconscious mind at its most receptive moment. The moments before sleep are critical. Your conscious mind begins to relax. Your subconscious mind becomes more open to suggestion. This is the ideal time to program your mind for wealth. Here is how it works. Before sleep, close your eyes. Breathe deeply. Calm your body and mind. Then hold one clear financial goal in your awareness. Not 10 goals, just one. Clarity is power. Visualize yourself already living this goal. Do not visualize the process. Visualize the outcome. See yourself in the reality you desire. Feel the emotions of that reality. Feel the confidence. Feel the gratitude. Feel the security. Make it as real as possible in your mind. Then repeat mentally, I am becoming the person who lives this reality. Notice the language. Not I want to become. Not I hope to become. I am becoming. This is present progressive tense. It implies the process is already happening. This is how you speak to the subconscious. You speak as if it is already done. The subconscious does not respond to future tense. It responds to present tense. When you say I am becoming, you activate the identity shift. You begin to see yourself differently. And when you see yourself differently, you behave differently. Then fall asleep with the image still present. Let it be the last thing in your conscious awareness before you drift into sleep. This allows the subconscious to work on it throughout the night. Night after night, your subconscious reshapes your identity around this vision. And when identity changes, destiny follows. You do not chase wealth anymore. You become the kind of person who naturally attracts wealth. You think differently. You speak differently. You make different decisions. You notice different opportunities. This is not manifestation in the mystical sense. This is identity transformation in the psychological sense. Earl Nightingale understood that you cannot outperform your self-image. If you see yourself as poor, you will unconsciously sabotage any wealth that comes your way. But if you see yourself as wealthy, you will unconsciously protect and grow any wealth you acquire. The bedtime practice rewires your self-image at the deepest level. Here is the magic Earl Nightingale pointed to. When thinking changes, everything changes. Thinking is the first domino. When it falls, it triggers a chain reaction. Rich thinking creates richer decisions. Richer decisions create richer habits. Richer habits create richer relationships. Richer relationships create richer opportunities. Richer opportunities create richer results. It all starts with thinking. But it does not stop there. It cascades through every area of your life. This is why you cannot fake rich thinking. You cannot pretend to think like a wealthy person while secretly believing you are unworthy of wealth. The subconscious sees through pretense. It knows what you truly believe, and it will create results that match your true beliefs, not your stated affirmations. Poor thinking creates the opposite chain reaction. Poor thinking creates rushed decisions made out of fear. Rushed decisions create poor habits. Poor habits create draining relationships. Draining relationships create missed opportunities. Missed opportunities create poor results. And poor results reinforce poor thinking. This is the poverty cycle. It is not about money. It is about mindset. And the only way to break the cycle is to interrupt the thinking. You must catch yourself in the act of poor thinking and consciously replace it with rich thinking. This requires vigilance. This requires discipline. This requires commitment. But it is the only way. The world does not respond to your wishes. The world responds to your mental pattern. If your mental pattern broadcasts scarcity, the world reflects scarcity back to you. If your mental pattern broadcasts abundance, the world reflects abundance back to you. This is not mystical. This is observable. Your mental pattern determines what you notice, what you ignore, what you pursue, what you avoid. Two people can attend the same networking event. One leaves with 3 business partners. The other leaves with nothing. Same event. Different mental patterns. The person with a rich mind saw opportunity. The person with a poor mind saw strangers. Your mental pattern is your filter. It determines what gets through and what gets blocked. If you want different results, you need a different filter. And the only way to change the filter is to change the thinking. Earl Nightingale offered a challenge that still stands today. He said, "Control your dominant thoughts for 30 days and your life will begin to change." This is the 30-day transformation for wealthy thinking. It is simple, but it is not easy. Most people cannot control their thoughts for 30 minutes, let alone 30 days. But those who succeed experience a complete mental shift. Here is the process. First, write your financial goal. Be specific. Not, "I want to be rich," but "I earn this specific amount by this specific date doing this specific work." Clarity activates the subconscious. Second, read your goal every morning and every night. Let it be the first thing you see when you wake up, and the last thing you see before you sleep. This keeps your goal at the forefront of your awareness. Third, visualize your goal daily. Spend at least 5 minutes seeing yourself living the reality you desire. Feel it. Believe it. Embody it. Fourth, refuse negative thinking. This is the hardest part. You must become the guardian of your mind. Every time a negative thought arises, you must catch it and redirect it. If you think, "I cannot do this," immediately replace it with, "I am learning how to do this." If you think, "This is too hard," replace it with, "I am becoming stronger through this challenge." This is mental discipline. It requires constant vigilance, but it gets easier with practice. Fifth, if you fall into fear or doubt, start the day over. Do not wait until tomorrow. Reset immediately. Go back to your goal. Read it again. Visualize it again. Reclaim your mental state. This is mental mastery. Most people let their minds run wild. They think whatever thoughts happen to appear. They react to every stimulus. They live at the mercy of their environment. But the wealthy control their inner environment. They decide what thoughts are allowed and what thoughts are rejected. After 30 days of this practice, something remarkable happens. Your default thinking pattern begins to shift. Thoughts that once felt forced now feel natural. Confidence that once felt fake now feels real. Opportunities that once seemed invisible now seem obvious. You do not become a different person. You become the person you were always capable of being. The person buried under years of poor programming. The person who was always there, waiting for you to clear away the mental debris. This is the transformation Earl Nightingale spoke about. It is not a trick. It is not a shortcut. It is a fundamental rewiring of the way you think. And when you think differently, you live differently. Earl Nightingale said something that only a few people ever truly apply. He said, "We become what we think about." Most people hear this and nod in agreement, but they do not live it. They do not apply it. They continue thinking the same thoughts they have always thought and wonder why their lives do not change. The rich are not lucky. The poor are not doomed. The mind is the great equalizer. It does not care about your background. It does not care about your past. It only cares about what you feed it today. And what you feed it today determines what you become tomorrow. This is the ultimate freedom. You are not trapped by your circumstances. You're only trapped by your thinking. And thinking can change in an instant. But here is the truth most people avoid. Changing your thinking requires effort. It requires discipline. It requires you to go against the grain of your current mental programming. It requires you to think thoughts that feel uncomfortable at first. It requires you to reject thoughts that feel familiar and safe. This is why most people never change. They prefer the comfort of familiar poverty over the discomfort of unfamiliar wealth. They would rather complain about their circumstances than take responsibility for their thinking. But you are not most people. If you were, you would not have made it this far. You would have stopped listening long ago. The fact that you are still here means something inside you recognizes the truth. Something inside you knows that your thinking determines your destiny. Now you know the thinking that determines who gets rich and who stays poor. You know that wealth begins in the mind. You know that the subconscious amplifies whatever you repeat. You know that clarity, visualization, and mental discipline are the tools of transformation. You know that the 30-day challenge can rewire your entire mental framework. And you know that the bedtime practice can reprogram your identity while you sleep. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you let it fade into the background of your awareness, like every other piece of information you have consumed? Or will you apply it? Will you commit to the 30 days? Will you guard your thoughts? Will you practice the bedtime visualization? Will you become the person who thinks like the rich? The choice is yours. But understand this. Every day you delay is a day you remain locked in the same mental pattern that has kept you where you are. And every day you apply these principles is a day you move closer to the wealth you desire. The thinking that determines who gets rich and who gets poor is no longer a mystery. You now possess the knowledge. The only question is whether you possess the discipline to use it.